This is Dr. Gigi Sabbat, and you're listening into the Walk With Me podcast. My guest today is John. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, such an honor to have you here today. Now, can you start off by telling us a little bit more about you and where are you from, John?
Yeah, so I'm just outside of Toronto, Canada, in a suburb called Burlington. And I've been here for about 25, 30 years. And prior to that, I was all over the world as a military persona. I was an Army medic, and so it took me overseas. At one time, I spent 7 years living in Europe. So that's how I ended up in financial services, by way of being taken advantage of and losing my entire savings for my first down payment of a home, and which brought me to becoming a financial planner and spending 30 years and helping thousands of families. And I've been always the contrarian, always looking for a better way to serve my fellow Canadian. And I've worked in the American markets and just had always wanted better against, the institutional tide that is really, the problems are just absolutely brutal right now. And I'll just give you a couple of key insights to the American issues at hand. So 49% of people, right, have less than 1 month of emergency fund. 77% of people have financial anxiety. Financial wellness, right, is at a point where people are losing sleep, fatigue is happening, concentration issues. I've talked to the people in my church where they, the helplines, et cetera, and prayer lines are all, overwhelmed with people with financial issues. It's the number one issue, the breakdown of the family unit. It used to be called, it was rapport, or the fact that communication was an issue. Now it's financial duress leading to that. And so, we want to change that. I mean, in the United States, it's stated that about 180 to $230 billion of lost productivity, up to $500 billion, if you can believe that, about 7 hours per employee per week. So the system's broken. The swamp has to be drained. And that's why we created Abby in an optimization environment, simple, understandable, so people that worry about money, are scared about money, are embarrassed about money, can have somewhere to go and build a plan, that is, really agnostic to what you make. Abby doesn't care. Abby just is going to give you a clear, concise understanding of where you're at and what it's going to take to what we call achieve these financial priorities that create happiness in your life. Because I, for one, don't believe that 6 streaming services is giving you any happiness. Maybe some entertainment, but definitely not happiness, right? And so we built this replacement of the financial planning program. I'm sure the banks and the financial planners out there are going to love to hate me. That's okay. When you stand for something and you that's what you do as a contrarian. But we've been talking to a ton of people. We beta tested 80% plus of our beta test, onboarded, took on the advice, and are running their Abby lives, as I like to say. And so Abby is dynamic, where most financial planning programs out there are linear. They're platforms to sell product, traction methodology, right? I don't care if you're a bank and it's a mortgage or whatever else, or financial planner selling insurance and investments and what have you. Been there, done that. Always fought, built my own company between 2003 and 2012.
Congratulations.
Built my first software that was the first to bridge. We called it the bridge. So it bridged the consumer to the vendor back offices and the financial planner. So everything was transparent for the first time. It was holistic in methodology. And we got 6 to 8 trade lines per household, because people want one-stop shopping. They don't want to go here, there, and everywhere. And but the friction point came, we had 600 advisors and 40 offices. And it just, my wife and I said, it's just, people are the issue. And so financial planners aren't completely loyal, always looking for the better deal, always looking to see where the grass is greener, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, we were so far ahead of the industry. And then 2.5 years ago, we moved to AI. I was completely blessed. I met a young man at Waterloo University, one of the top universities in the world for computer science. He's a Neuralips recipient. I didn't know at that time what Neuralips was. And so, I looked it up, and most prestigious awards you can get his were on AI and large language modeling safety. It's what he's doing now for his PhD. that led me to, having Dr. Stephen Watt, one of the most renowned mathematical academics and computer science personas out there, is he's now our interim CTO, and as well as an advisory board chair. And so Abby is about decision making. Life is about cause and effect. Like, budget apps are wonderful, but they don't do anything. Like, they don't stop people because the cause and effect isn't really there, right? So you could be $100 or $200 over budget on whatever your budget was, shopping or golfing. What does that really mean, right? And by the way, every bank already has that. You don't need it third party. But what do those dollars mean, right? So we built this optimization environment. You rank your priorities. What makes you truly happy in life? Okay, that's the difference between goals and priorities. And joking around earlier, I said to you when we met, gym memberships explode in January. 90% of people quit in May. But the difference between a goal of health and a priority is, what if somebody got ill? What if they got, diabetes or cardiovascular disease? All of a sudden that gym is a priority because health is a priority. Same with finance. It needs to be viewed the same way. So you rank them, and the optimization environment runs multiple simulations, finds the clearest path, and then we give you a Google Maps breakdown exactly what you have to do to achieve those priorities. Like, Gigi at the stop sign, make a right. In this case, Gigi, put X amount in your 401k at this time every month. Put X amount into your kid's educational program, or pay X amount on this credit card. That's the type of work we've done. And then we took it a step further, and we found out what the biggest questions are for people. So now we have a decision hub that's ranked inside the planning process, where, can I buy a car? And it's like, put 4 or 5 different vehicles in there. You choose the one you want. We'll show you how that affects your priorities. Can I buy another house, or could I buy a house? Do I qualify for a mortgage? Can I finance this? Like, all of a sudden you got to get a roof put on the house. What does that cost? 20, 30, 40,000. What does that do to my priorities? Or worse, I have to finance something, I have an emergency. What does that do to my priorities? And so right down to like insurance and risk, like what coverage do I need? And I am a firm believer in term, have been a caveat for, 30 years of my life. And I have no use for cash value life insurance or better ways to do things, but they don't pay commissions, so they're not talked about. So we finally got it to a point where now we finish Abby Chat, which is the ability to talk to your financial plan. So right now it's the point where you could go on and say, I got a 5% pay increase. And Abby, what does this do to my financial plan? And Abby will say, I understand that you went from 100 to 105,000. Would you like me to run new simulations? You'll say yes. And then boom, it'll say, Gigi, your 401k is going to be at this, your Roth is going to be here. You're out of debt this many years earlier. Your increase in retirement savings is this amount. You can now retire from where you expected at 65 to 62 with no impact on your burn rate at retirement. And so no zero hallucinations, because we do use OpenAI to the conversation side, but we drill down into the optimization environment so that the data is actual and the report you're getting on your question is actual, which is a game changer, right? All encompassing.
Very good. And I actually was in the financial realm as well. So I do have financial knowledge in regards to that, and financial literacy, right? Let's talk about it. That's actually one of the chapters in my Walk With Me book as well. So why is financial literacy important, John?
Well, at the end of the day, if you're not literate, like if you can't read and write, let's just, where can you go? What can you do? So if you're not financially literate, where can you go? What can you do in your life, right? You're going to get taken advantage of, right? You're going to be in a situation where, pride or fear or whatever that blocker is going to allow you to get talked into anything. And so if you're literate, and we have like 900 odd questions on literacy alone in Abby, and we'll have the same for the US model that you just asked. And Abby will give you that answer based upon, right? We're actually using the Canadian government. We're going to use the US government for that in the States. And so think of your kids. Why do we put our kids through school, right? So they become literate. Why do we want them to have a better life? So if you want a better life, you have to be literate. But there is a division between just you can be financially literate, but not to the point of understanding product and process, and you can still get taken advantage of, right? So let me give you an example. I've had doctors, lawyers, architects, civil engineers, brilliant people, got their own spreadsheets, had a significant, level of financial literacy. And then I find out we run them a program that's like, well, there's a $600,000 difference here. Well, how's that reality? I go, well, you're spending, 2.25% as a management expense ratio, for example, or you're not optimizing your mortgage. And so, well, what does that even mean? So optimizing a mortgage is optimizing the rate and knowing at what point to break a mortgage and, retain the right rate. And what does the difference of that rate mean long-term in your financial plan? So every data point that you live with can be optimized financially. Optimize your decisions, optimize your investments. Like for me, 29 years in the S&P 500, when I have financial planners try to prospect me, they don't know who I am. I just give them that and they back off right away, right? They can't beat it. They're middlemen to begin with. And, if you subtract the management expense ratios and you take a look at the growth of the S&P, and I don't see it changing for the next 25 years. And so it should be a chunk of your portfolio, depending on your age. But boy, if you're young, there's no reason why you can't be 90% vested in the S&P moving forward. You look at the last 2 years, 3 years, plus, with dividend, 18, 19, 20% plus. So, using the rule of 72, very simple, algorithmic equation, take interest, divide in 72, shows you how quickly money will compound and double. So, people don't realize that the simple task, like, pay your credit card 3 to 4 days before it's due. Why? Because it's going to take 48 to 72 hours to process. If you're not on time on processing, you're incurring an interest fee. Do that over a lifetime. That's tens of thousands of dollars that with growth can end up being hundreds of thousands of dollars. These are things that Abby has already built into her algorithmic scenarios in order to help people. And the biggest one for me that's crushing both countries is debt and the accumulation of debt at such a rapid, place. So we want literacy. We want to bring Abby to schools. I think home economics should be more than baking bread. I think, it should be predictive learning on what you're going to be and how you're going to be that person. I don't think it's a shocker to say that there's a lot of liberal arts graduates who end up being baristas. And I don't say that to be disrespectful to anybody, but, if you could role play at school using Abby, I want to be an engineer. I want to be a carpenter. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. And then you do the due diligence using a chat GPT or whatever you want. You fill out that and you look at your life before you live it. When will I buy a house? When will I be retired? I'm a big fanatic on retire as early as possible, right? And what I mean by that is, look, if you retire at 65, you've got like 10 good years before morbidity kicks in. And age, right, is age. Nobody's going to escape that. Definitely. So you got to be able and focus on the earliest point of reference. I say give up now to get more later. Unfortunately, most people want to get now, right, and give up later. But the fact is, we're living older, right? The age of mortalities are increasing continuously. And if we don't take this into effect, we're going to be very unhappy later. So these are the aspects that we want to teach and work with Abby along the literacy lines, where we can push kids, right, in a thought process predictively, like this is what your life's going to look like. And this is how you should be living it. It's okay to be a tradesperson. It's okay to do this. It's okay to do that, right? And therefore, have a clear, concise mental picture of how great life's going to be. Not go to school, got a massive student loan, have all this anxiety, get whatever job I can. And that's another great module we have is change my job and what does it do to me? Right. Especially for kids coming out of college. Do I want to move to the Valley and what happens if I move there, right? The expenses are extreme. Or should I stay local home because I'm a family, purpose persona? What is it easier for me to live closer to my family where my heart is, make 15, 20, 25,000 less a year? But that money would have went out the window anyways to cost of living in the Valley. So these are all questions that, that generation needs to answer. And the coolest thing I read, I think it was McKinsey, don't quote me on that, but one of them brought out that 91% 2 years ago of U.S. graduates, which was 4.1 million young people, the smart kids, did not want to work with a financial planner. Why? They've seen what's happened to mom and dad. They've seen the boomers, right? They've
Right.
seen what's going on, and they know that we got ripped. They know that it doesn't work. They know that by paying somebody else all that money, it's taken away from your future. And so, we're the first, to my knowledge, to create something at this level to bring to the consumer. But I would say to you that I believe wholeheartedly that in 10 years' time, there'll be, everything will be hybrid, but at least 50% plus of the financial planning world will have disappeared because, the institutions want it, but they just can't say anything about it right now. They can't wait to lose that liability. They can't wait to have, right, that digital world in place, right? Think about the costs of all those people, all that administration, all that bricks and mortar, all that world that they live in. And I've talked to CEOs, right, and quietly, and that's what they're looking for. And you're starting to see parts of it to the higher levels of wealth. It's starting to happen. But we build Abby for everybody, right? Very big on, military personas, where we just ran 6,000 people, nurses, firefighters, teachers, and police officers. And we found that Abby was able to give them an 80% higher increase in retirement than they would have normally. And so when we come to the US, we use the statistics of labor, and here we use Stats Canada, and we'll be running tens of thousands through the Abby program and be able to show exactly why people need Abby. And so I just want to take it a step further. We are sheepdogs, right? Normally used from a military standpoint, but really when you're protective of something, you are a sheepdog. So I am protective, okay, and wanting to change the game. And I am not going to allow the sheep, as the shepherd, if you will, go back out to the wolves. So our ethos is we want to leverage massive onboarding to say to an insurance company, we don't need that commission. We want you to cut 50% of it out. We want the lowest cost product that's feasible in the marketplace. Same with auto and home. Same with a mortgage. And we want to optimize that difference into Abby.
Very good.
And create tens of thousands of dollars of workable liquidity to making them happy to their priorities, which could be like, I'm a believer in spending time with your kids. I'm an outdoorsman. Get out in the creation that was meant for us to be. And that's where we're given the garden originally. And, we messed that up. But I just really believe that, as families, if you're out camping or fishing or hiking and breathing, with the clean air that's there and spending time and building memories, right? I don't care if it rains. I don't care, because those will become comedies in the future when you talk about it. Yeah. Those things are important. And these are the things that I'm trying to drive home so that people use Abby effectively, right? If it's great to buy a car that's world renowned for luxury, but what's wrong with just getting from point A to point B if it means another $300,000-$400,000 to making you happy and the right priorities? Like, we've got things backwards. We think brand is everything. We think having things is everything, and what matters is peace of mind, right?
Very powerful.
Yeah, and so. I hear it preached every Sunday, being a Judeo-Christian evangelical. And I believe the three pillars of life, are faith, fitness and finance. And, if you can, work hard in those three aspects, you live a healthy, rounded life. And I don't care what everybody else thinks or says about you. They're not happy. You show me somebody that's got a ton of money, I'll show you somebody's got a ton of problems. And we can go over a bazillion different, right, personas that are on TV on a continuous basis, right? And so, money's not the end, but it's needed. And the cause and effect of it, right, is going to be every decision that you make in your life, because that's how we're set up.
That's right. And funds are needed to keep the lights on to be able to continue to serve. Very powerful. Well said, John. And John, what is your best advice to the audience for walking with purpose and living a life of happiness?
So I just want to reiterate, faith, because in the darkest times, we're not able to fight the darkness alone. So I'm just going to lay it on the line. Faith is so important to my life. Secondly, finance, because I've seen a lot of faithful people struggle because of non-financial literacy and become problematic and backslide and what have you, right?
Right.
And then fitness, right? So if your faith's in place and your finances in place, but your fitness is not, then all that time that you spend on doing the other two things, right, is being stolen away from you because of health issues. And right now, mental health is at an all-time high problematically. And the biggest issue is financial duress and stress, as we talked about those statistics earlier. But that balance of life and those three pillars, I implore people to just, take a step back. You don't need 12 pairs of jeans. I make my coffee every morning. I make my lunch every day. I drive a pickup truck. I want to be an example of a servant leader to what you have to do, right? Because, hey, look at, once upon a life ago, I made, buku money as a financial planner, and I went down that, and it did not make me happy. And so no matter what I did was right for the consumer. But it was like, well, if you didn't drive a Mercedes, were you a good financial planner? Or if you didn't have a 5 to 10,000 square foot home, were you a good financial planner? And now, I'm so happy working with the new generations, because a lot of them don't even think they can buy a house right now, and a lot of them are looking at mom and dad and going, not what I want, not what I want. And so these are the reasons for Abby. And so it's a new world. I'm going to start my own podcast at the end of this month.
Congratulations.
You've inspired me as well as a few others. And it's a no bunk reality, drain the swamp. This is what they're doing. Here's why they're doing it. Here's why fixed 5-year mortgages in our country are forced to people, why the derivative is set up the way it is. Why people sell this insurance, why you should own this. And then the greatest part, if you don't believe me, onboard Abby and look at the math, because the math doesn't lie. The math is black and white. There's no gray area. That's the important part. It's one thing saying it. It's the ability to prove it. And so there's a lot of influencers, a lot of podcasters out there in the financial sector. And I'm seeing a new book written every day because, AI does that for us. My wife has written 3 children's books already, and one on the origin of St. Nicholas, which I can't wait. It'll come out before I go Christmas next year.
Wow. And
all AI, set up for her. But what people need is a tool that's personal, yes. Right? And then I implore the employers of our countries to take a look at what we've got here, because how can we fight competitively against the world in productivity if 7 hours a week per employee is being stolen from us because of stress, right? I don't know about you, but, if you get a mental health, $1,000 a year, $2,000 a year, how many actual therapy sessions is that? How many actual massages or
a lot?
It's not defined. And then you still got the massive problem that people are dealing with, right, was financial stress. So we're hoping that, a low-cost subscription with recommendations where we're going to say, hey, if you don't want that product that we have cheapest in the market than anybody else, you feel free to do it. Like we're not forcing anybody. But then run the plan and see what it costs you. Because somebody's got to get paid. So we're just saying we want to get paid less. We want that subscription fee, lowest we can make it. And we want you to save money. And nobody's had that way of doing things for your country 250 years, for mine 150 years. And it's time that swamp got drained and people realized that, the big towers in Manhattan and in Toronto here in Canada, they represent your lost life and liquidity. At the end of the day, you paid for it. And so let's reverse that. Let's get it working for you.
I love it. Very powerful, John. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Walk With Me podcast. Now, where can the audience find you, John?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, right? First and foremost. And then, our website, which is about to be changed, is www.wealthyplanet.com. And so hop on, even if you're an American and you want to see what we're doing, just hop on, right? Right now, the program is only $10. We're creating a data flow program in Canada as well as the US, where, open banking is not a reality right now, but there are abilities to use Plaid and Flinks here in Canada and update your Abby plan continuously. So, you can take 30 minutes a week for financial fitness and look at your life and look at your decisions and reinforce it. And just like, I hate to say going to the gym again is the analogy, but, it never starts pretty, but man, you're there a few months and you start to feel better. And then there's a swagger in your life. But this time it's less anxiety. It's more sleep. It's more of having a concentrated effort with your kids, with your spouse, and living that life you always wanted to, because you have direction.
That's nice. Thank you so much, John.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. And God bless you and be safe, John.
And same with you, right? Have a great study tonight.